Good evening, everyone. It is Thursday, July the 17th, and the summer is just flying right along. We're in general getting just enough rain to keep the crops moving ahead, but we'll talk a little bit more about that later. This week's video, we're starting in a soybean field near Glenlee, and there's P009, Z94E, as well as P008, Z25Es in this particular field. Basically, this whole field is showing some symptoms of dicamba damage, and we noticed that a couple of weeks ago, and we're just coming back in today to take a look at where we are in terms of regrowth and getting over some of those symptomologies that we're seeing. So again, we're seeing that the bottom, about third of a plant, those soybean leaves are normal, and then in that middle section, we're seeing a lot more of those cupped leaves, which is indicative of the dicamba drift. On the top of these plants, on the new growth, we're seeing that these leaves are actually forming quite normally again, and as a result, we don't expect to see a lot of yield deficit as a result of the spray drift. We're also noticing that there's a little bit more branching and more of those soybeans are actually forming on the lower branches. So again, we're expecting some great results in this field this year. Now, the last thing we'll talk about in this location is another wonderful weed that we're seeing more of this year than we normally do, and that's volunteer corn in our soybeans. So last year we had quite a bit of standability issues and strong winds in fall, so there's a little bit more of those ears that went back into the ground, and as a result we're seeing this volunteer corn. So in general, we've been using a quizalofop product like Assure to control the volunteer corn in soybeans, and that's still going to work at this point, but as we move into more power corn list hybrids on the corn front, those volunteers will also be quizalofop tolerant. So as a result, we're going to have to be using a clethodim product such as Select or Centurion to control the power corn list volunteers as we move forward over the next number of years. Next, we're going to take a look at some of our corn and see where we are in terms of maturity and development. So far this July, fields in our area have ranged anywhere from ½ an inch to just over 3 inches of rainfall. And that means that soil moisture conditions are all over the map as we head into the reproductive stages of corn development. In this corn PKP in the Giroux area, some of the earlier flowering hybrids, including the brand new P75 303 PCE, as well as the new P78 150 PCE, are right in line in terms of flowering date with a staple hybrid P78 22 Acre Max. On the other hand, P78 44 Acre Max is just starting to show its silks, and the latest hybrid in here, which is P87 040 PCE, which is generally grown for silage, still has 2 or 3 leaves to go before we'll even see the tassels. So overall, we're coming into the silking stage about a week to 10 days earlier than average. So that's great news in terms of yield potential, as well as in terms of bushel weights that we can expect this year. It also means that we're going to have a little bit more grace in terms of the late emerging plants that we have based on the kind of difficult planting conditions in a lot of cornfields. So the corn at this stage of growth, from the tassel to the full blister stage, can use up to 1/3 of an inch of water per day. So overall, we would love to have some steady rains in the next 2 weeks to make sure that we have good pollen shed and good pollination, which then will lead to good yield potential. In terms of yield potential in here right now, it is hard to say as it's not fertilized yet, but we're seeing these little ears anywhere from 12 to 16 rows around, so that should be an average to slightly above average yield. But again, within 2 weeks, we should be able to come back in here and see it at blister stage and have a really good yield assessment for you. And one last note for this week's video, if you are a sunflower grower, you might have to get some signs ready because there's about to be a lot of city dwellers with a renewed interest in both agriculture as well as trespassing. Right now I'm in a field of P63 HE501s in the St. Pierre area, and as you can see here, they're just starting to bloom. We are seeing a little bit of insects, but mostly on the headlands, and we're not too concerned about that at this point. Sunflowers look great this year. They put down deep roots and have been managing to get enough moisture out to really put on a lot of growth as we get into those reproductive cycles. If I step back another 6 feet in this field, I'll disappear entirely. So that's a great sign in terms of what kind of yields we can expect. If you have any crop questions, please don't hesitate to give us a call. And once again, thank you for watching this year's weekly video updates.